Thanks Fiona and thanks Stevie for the contribution, and thanks very much to the Socialist Party for the invitation here to speak this afternoon. I'm delighted we're discussing this issue. I think I'm looking at the programme, there's very many interesting debates and very many that topical. I'm delighted that the Socialist Party regard this as topical also. Stevie's speech, look, I mean, a great deal of it related to the topic at hand, but a great deal of it was dedicated to attacks on Sinn Féin, or criticisms of Sinn Féin, or whatever you want to describe it as. And I could spend a considerable period of time defending that, and I reject outright the contention that Sinn Féin is a pro-business or pro-capitalist party. I reject outright the contention that Sinn Féin is a sectarian party, although I will say, I will concede that Sinn Féin can and must do more to represent both sides, or all sides of the community in the North, and to reach across the sectarian divide. I believe we can and should do more in that regard, but I do not believe that Sinn Féin is a sectarian party. Well, having said all that, I'm not here to defend Sinn Féin. That's not the purpose of this debate. I could do that at length, as I say. I'm here to discuss a very specific issue, and that's the issue of border poll or unity referendum, and in my view, a united Ireland. Because for me, a unity referendum is a mechanism, and maybe there's space to discuss other mechanisms. Maybe there's scope for to explore that, and maybe the Socialist Party have ideas in relation to other mechanisms of how we can negotiate the issues of people's desire for nationality and how they identify and how democracy should be organised on this island or this island and our neighbouring island. Maybe there's other mechanisms. But this is the mechanism that we support, and that is in place in the Good Friday Agreement. So that's what I'm going to discuss. And as I say, it being a mechanism, I'm primarily going to discuss why I believe a united Ireland is important, something worth pursuing, and something that I am passionate about. Stevie took, to a large extent, the starting point as 1969. There's a lot of sense of that because it changed substantially the political map in the north and in the south, and led to a tragic, deeply violent, and in many aspects a conflict that contains many elements and incidents of sectarianism. But I'm going to go back to partition, which is at the stage of 1969 was about the same distance from them as 69 is to us. And I think whatever your view on what should happen in the here and now and how things should progress from here, it won't surprise anyone to say that I believe that partition was a catastrophe and a tragedy for Irish democracy. And I think even whatever your view, as I say, of what happens in the here and now, I think many of you would probably share that view as well. Partition, where you had the potential and the organic growth of a dynamic democratic movement, Republican movement, but broad-based and popular in its aims, that was progressive, that had all the ambitious aspirations of the democratic programme of the First Dáil. Where you had that, was sundered the labour movement, the women's movement, and so many other progressive organisations across the state. It created two narrow, mean-minded, conservative, sectarian, elitist regimes. In the north, you had a deeply sectarian, unionist regime, which institutionalised decades of injustice. And in the south, you had a deeply confessional state, which had extreme poverty, used emigration constantly as its valve for dissent and poverty, inequality, and the horrific institutional abuse that was based in large part on the centrality that the state placed on the Catholic Church, and allowing the Catholic Church to run so many of its institutions, from hospitals, schools, to institutions such as the mother and baby institutions and the Magdalene laundries. Censorship was pervasive in the South, and we saw some of our greatest writers in both languages banned and censored. So that was the outcome of the counter-revolution, and the old imperial regime was replaced by new native economic elites in different guises, north and south of the border. So partitionism, I believe, has meant the sectarian and authoritarian nature of the northern state, and indeed a largely sectarian and conservative southern state. Now, the conflict that existed from 1969 has thankfully come to an end, but all that connected to it and all that caused it still exists. And in my belief, partition does damage still. It, I believe, sustains sectarianism. It has created a duplication of public services, two sets of currencies, tax systems, laws and regulations, and I believe holds back the potential of the north and the south. And having said that there is significant division, and I agree with Stevie, there is still enormous division. However, I would still say that it is worth saying that in the almost 100 years of the state, that the first 60 or 70 years was characterised by a dominant sectarian state, the next 30 or 40 years characterised by conflict. And however imperfect what we have is now, I do believe it is a significant improvement on the two periods before that. I believe that the solution, and I believe that the potential exists for the transformation of democracy on this island through United Ireland. However, I want to underline that the reason that I and other Republicans believe in Irish unity is not simply an exercise in making the map look tidier or in righting past wrongs. I want to emphasise why I believe in United Ireland, because I believe it is in the best interests of all the people of the site. And I accept there are people who don't share that view, and there's a discussion to be had there and a debate to be had, but that is my point of view and the point of view of my political party. And I suppose in the context of the way I started, like, Sinn Féin is the only party that favours Irish unity, and we don't intend to own or be the only party associated with it. We want to work with other people. We want to work with the Socialist Party, if they are so minded. What I am here to pursue is a political objective, and like any of you, I joined a political party as a vehicle. There are policies that I believe in, and Sinn Féin is the party that I identify strongest with. But above that, what I identify with is policies and things I want to see happen in this country. I'm sure people in the Socialist Party are the same. And it's the idea that I am most loyal to. So we're currently in the midst of a period of dramatic change and tumult. And I think these unprecedented times require imagination, open minds and fresh thinking. The political realities, both north and south, and in Britain, have altered matters significantly. Brexit significantly saw a considerable gap between attitudes in Scotland and the North as against England. The North largely voted to stay in the EU. Take whatever view you may of the EU, but that is a reality. And I believe that the British government's intention to take the North out of the EU, despite the wishes of people there to remain, is potentially very damaging. Not only because of the political implications of a hard border, but also because of its negative impact on the Good Friday Agreement and the provisions that guarantee co-equal rights, human rights, north and south. So this means that having a discussion around the political and constitutional arrangements now have a greater urgency and relevance than heretofore. The recent elections has also illustrated a changing dynamic in politics in the north. It is a reality that the unionist political bloc is no longer a majority and is likely not to return to that position. Attitudes are changing significantly on a wide variety of issues, but on this particular issue, there was a recent opinion poll that showed that among younger voters between 18 and 44, there is a majority in favour of United Ireland in the area of 56.4. The overall results were 45%, 55% in favour of the union. Now that's just an opinion poll, I accept that, not the be-all and the end-all, but it surely shows that a vote by a majority in favour of Irish unity is well within the bounds of possibility now and into the future. Now, as a supporter of Irish unity, and for Sinn Féin also, our responsibility doesn't end simply with calling for a border poll. There is a responsibility on us to persuade people of the merits of it and to convince people of what a united Ireland would look like, the shape it would take, and how all identities and communities can be accommodated within it. It also involves persuading people of the fact that, in my view, it would be a more prosperous situation, it would mean concrete improvements in people's lives, and it would mean stability. There are simply no advantages, in my view, for a small nation of 6.4 million on the edge of Europe in having two separate tax regimes, two separate legal systems, two separate and competing economic development programs. And you see in border communities the implications that the border has had, benefiting one side or the other and causing fluctuations. I believe that Irish unity would be better for agriculture. It would certainly would be better for energy and for the environment by allowing a single energy market. And I believe, like, there's evidence to show that oil and wine trade and manufacturing could generate 3 or 2.4 billion additional for Ireland. There's a fair bit of research that is increasingly being done that outlines how a United Ireland would work better. Michael Burke and Kurt Hubner are the two significant ones, and they outline how, and it includes modelling, reunifications and a number of examples, and how this would drive the economy and increase prosperity. All that said, what is an economy if it cannot deliver services? And what the United Ireland that we want to see involves taking the best of the equation on both sides of the border. I don't believe there's any sense in having two sets of public service, civil services, transport services and healthcare services, and I think United Ireland could and should see the best elements of all combined. What we are above is a new Ireland. We're not talking about a 26 county deluxe state or two states attached. We are for an Ireland that builds reconciliation between orange, green and otherwise, that's democratic, inclusive and based on equality, freedom and social solidarity. A new republic that embraces the ethos of that democratic programme I referred to earlier and shares its wealth equitably, looks after the aged and the young, provides full rights for people with disabilities, liberates women and the LGBTQ community and delivers the highest standards of public services. I believe that a new United Ireland would require a new constitution and new constitutional arrangements. A new and unified Ireland would need to be pluralist, inclusive and accommodating to all our people in their diversity. We're conscious of our obligations to address the genuine fears and concerns of unionists in a meaningful way. And that's not something that just happens on a single occasion, that's an ongoing dialogue and something that we are committed to. And I believe every supporter of a United Ireland needs to be committed to on an ongoing basis. So we need to recognise that people feel British, and we need to understand what people mean by their sense of Britishness and be willing to explore and be open to new concepts constitutionally. The Irish tradition is an Irish tradition, and it must be accommodated and agreed in United Ireland. We need a new constitution. We need a new Bill of Rights for all citizens and an All-Ireland Charter of Fundamental Rights. I believe that people who hold British citizenship should continue to hold such citizenship and have the right to pass that on to their children without prejudice to their citizenship. I believe one of the biggest concerns that existed and very likely continues to exist in the North in relation to the South is the influence of the Catholic Church over many of our institutions, including in education. And I believe that we need to pursue, and I think this is something that the Socialist Party very likely is very much in agreement with also, we need to pursue a non-sectarian, a non-religious, a pluralist education system that reflects all the traditions, communities and faith backgrounds of all communities in this island and all those cultures that exist on this island. We need constitutional recognition of the unique identity of Northern Unionists and the British cultural identity of a significant number of people in the North and of all the institutions as well as, I suppose, our ultimate destination and the things that we believe need to be in place at that point. There is also a need to considering transitional arrangements. And as a party, we are very much open to any of the suggestions that the Socialist Party has in relation to that. That would, I believe, or could mean certainly, and I would certainly favour, continued devolution, local self-government, perhaps involving a power-sharing executive. It could involve a federal arrangement, as well as a unitary state and other arrangements. And we need constitutional safeguards and protections for the political identity of unions, who must be assured of their place and political dispensation. Influence in any new dispensation. That will include perhaps weighted parliamentary majorities, guaranteed number of parliamentary seats, and other arrangements. So we want to appeal to people to be part of a new, reimagined and pluralist and outward-looking Ireland. I believe that the United Kingdom is a state that is increasingly inward-looking, that is becoming less pluralist rather than more pluralist, and I believe that we have the potential to offer a counterbalance to that. I believe that whatever you view of Sinn Féin, in the long arc of history, republicanism is a pluralistic tradition that values difference and is inclusive and pluralist. And I believe that a state founded on principles such as that, as I say, can offer a significant counterbalance to the increasingly narrow, inward-looking and conservative United Kingdom. And one of the reasons that I believe a united Ireland is the interests of all people on this island is because